Today's talk is not about inheritance, but about the unseen legacy that shapes a child's life long before any will is written. Please join me in welcoming the founder of Budding Bean English, Dr. CK, as he shares about his latest book, Inkless Wills.
Today, I'd like to share what I believe is a father's greatest responsibility and why his role matters so much in a family. We all know the famous British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. He was a respected author and the leader of the Conservative Party. He once said, "No success in public life can compensate for failure in the home." As parents, we don't get a second chance. If you fail in your career, you can always start again or find another job. But if we fail to raise our children well, we can never start over again. That is why every parent must take this responsibility seriously. When parenting fails, the consequences may affect our children for the rest of their lives. Imagine a child who grows up addicted to gambling, wastes the family's savings, or falls into drug abuse. Can we really bear the consequences? For any parent, it would be heartbreaking. So I hope every parent here will truly value the responsibility of raising a child, because raising children is one of the most meaningful and important responsibilities we will ever have. No matter how successful you are in your career, if you fail to raise your children well, the consequences can be far greater. And the impact doesn't stop with your children, it can affect future generations. Why? Because children grow up learning the values they see at home. When a family is filled with violence, unhealthy habits, or poor values, those patterns are often passed on. This isn't about genetics, it's about influence. Children naturally imitate their parents. If a father abuses his wife, his son may grow up believing that violence is normal. That's how unhealthy values are passed from one generation to the next. The same is true with money. If parents spend everything they earn without saving, their children often develop the same habit. One day, they may pass those same values on to their own children. The same is true of the way we handle our emotions. When parents lose their temper whenever problems arise, children often learn to respond the same way. Instead of communicating calmly, they solve problems with anger. I'm not saying this happens every time, but the chances are very high. Children naturally imitate what they see in their parents. That's why both fathers and mothers have a powerful influence on their children. Some parents may ask, if my child misbehaves, is that really my responsibility? I've taught them what's right. If they still choose the wrong path, what else can I do? I've reminded them countless times. I nag them every day. I've even disciplined and scolded them. So why don't they change? The truth is, a child's character isn't formed when they become adults. It begins to develop during early childhood. By around the age of 6, about 80% of a child's brain has already developed. By the age of 12, the brain is almost the same size as an adult's. During these years, emotional habits, ways of thinking, and behavior are taking shape. That's why the way we guide our children in these early years is so important. We often hear parents say, "My child doesn't like it." Because I'm in education, I hear this all the time. Let me ask you this: does anyone truly enjoy going to work every day? What if you have to work under the hot sun or your boss keeps scolding you? Would you enjoy that? Probably not. But even if you don't like it, you still have to go to work. Why? Because you have a family to support and responsibilities to fulfill. As adults, we often have to do things we don't enjoy. Children are different. They simply think, if I don't like it, I won't do it. That's why the years before the age of 6 are so important. During this stage, a child's personality and behavior are taking shape. The way we guide them at this age has a lasting impact on their future. I often visit the toy section in shopping malls. I'm there to observe the children. More importantly, I watch how their parents respond to them. Because in those everyday interactions, you can often see a family's parenting style and the values that are shaping a child's future. We often see this happen in shopping malls. A child refuses to leave the toy section and says, "Mom, I want that toy. Are you going to buy it or not?" If mom says no, the child starts crying. He rolls on the floor and throws a tantrum. He might even knock things off the shelves. He will also think, "If you still won't buy it, I'll keep crying." Why does he do that? Because he wants to embarrass his parents. He wants them to feel they cannot handle the situation. Once this becomes a habit, the child learns something very quickly. He realizes my parents are afraid when I behave like this. He is no longer afraid of the consequences. He knows that if he cries or throws a tantrum, his parents will eventually give in. As soon as they feel uncomfortable, they will buy the toy for him. When a child believes that threatening his parents is the easiest way to get what he wants, he develops the wrong mindset. He begins to think, if I pressure you, you'll give in. I can get what I want by making you uncomfortable. I can control people through emotional outbursts or even aggressive behavior. Otherwise, you won't give me what I want. Gradually, the child learns this lesson. The one who cries gets what he wants. From then on, whenever he wants something, he throws a tantrum. But what happens when he grows up and starts working? Can he cry? Can he shout? Can he throw a tantrum? Of course not. His boss will simply say, "Don't come back tomorrow." Will crying help? No. As children, they may think crying gets results. But as adults, we all know that crying solves nothing. That's why we must teach our children this lesson while they are still young. The same is true when it comes to studying. Is studying hard? Of course it is. What do children enjoy most? Playing. Just look at the children here today. They're having a wonderful time. Why? Because they're playing. But if you ask them to sit down, practice their writing, and study, they'll quickly say, "I'm tired." Good habits don't happen by themselves. They must be built from an early age. So when should we begin? Before the age of 6. Those early years are the best time to build discipline and good character. Yes, they may cry, roll on the floor, and refuse to listen. That's all right. At that age, you can still teach and guide them. But if you wait until they're 12 or 18, do you think you can still control them? By then, it is often too late. Some children even threaten their parents. We've all seen children suddenly doing something dangerous. They jump from high places or deliberately do something risky. Why do they behave like this? Because they're trying to scare their parents. They're thinking, if you won't listen to me, I'll do something even more extreme. Let's see if I can frighten you into giving in. That's why some children use extreme behavior to control their parents. Why does this happen? Because they have never learned healthy boundaries. They don't know what is acceptable and what is not. That's why, before the age of 6, parents must be willing to say no. Over time, children learn that some things are allowed and some things are not. This is how we develop a child's sense of boundaries. What is a sense of boundaries? It means knowing what you can do and what you cannot do. Without clear boundaries, children are much more likely to develop serious behavioral problems later in life. As someone who has spent many years in education, I believe one of the biggest challenges today is this. Many children struggle after entering primary school. By primary 3, their results often begin to decline. By primary 6, many have fallen far behind. Why does this happen? Because they were never properly prepared before starting primary school. Parents send them to school, but they haven't prepared them well enough for the journey ahead. Do you know what it really means for a child to enter primary school? Many people think, isn't it just going to school? But learning begins long before the first day of school. A child needs to be prepared. What should they be prepared for? First, they need to recognize words. Second, they need to understand what the teacher is saying. The problem is that many parents send their children to primary school without proper preparation. They simply enroll them and hope everything will be fine. Let me give you an example. After kindergarten, children move on to primary school. In Malaysia, they may have to learn 3 languages: Chinese, English, and Malay. Do you know how much vocabulary they should have before starting school? Most parents don't. If we don't know what's required, how can we know whether our child is ready? Some parents ask, can kindergarten prepare them? The answer is not completely. Research shows that children learning in their mother tongue usually enter primary school with a receptive vocabulary of about 2,500 to 3,500 words. Let's use 3,000 words as a simple benchmark. For example, before Japanese children enter primary school, they already understand about 3,000 Japanese words. The same is true in Thailand. Before Thai children start school, they already understand around 3,000 Thai words. The same applies to children in China. But what about children in Malaysia? If you send your child to a Chinese primary school, how many Chinese words can they understand? If you send them to a national school, how many Malay words do they know? For native Malay-speaking children, having around 3,000 Malay words is generally not a problem. This is a common challenge among many Chinese children. When they enter primary school, their Malay is weak, their English is weak, and even their Chinese isn't strong enough. Why? Because they weren't properly prepared before starting school. Before entering primary school, children need the right preparation. One of the most important things is building a strong vocabulary. Ideally, they should understand around 2,500 to 3,000 words before they start school. What does that mean? Today, many kindergartens teach only about 500 words. That's simply not enough. Vocabulary isn't just about memorizing words. It includes listening, speaking, reading, and writing. A child with a vocabulary of 3,000 words doesn't have to use every word fluently. They may understand about 3,000 words, actively use around 2,000, read about 1,000, and write around 500. That's perfectly normal. Reading and writing will continue to improve after they enter primary school. The important thing is this. Before they start school, they should understand around 3,000 words. At the very least, they need to understand what the teacher is saying. Without a vocabulary of about 2,500 to 3,000 words, many classroom lessons simply won't make sense. So, dear parents, prepare your children well before they enter primary school. Help them build a strong vocabulary first. It will make their transition to primary school much smoother. Let me share an example. When my son was in primary 3, his mathematics results started to drop. I asked him, "Why did you do so poorly in math?" He answered, "I don't know." So I asked, "You don't know the questions or you don't understand the questions?" These are two different things. Then I went through the paper with him, one question at a time. To my surprise, he was able to solve all the direct computation math questions. But the moment we reached the questions that required reading and understanding the instructions, he was unable to continue. He stopped and said, "I don't know." I said, "Read the question out loud," but he couldn't even read the question properly. He could understand only about 30% of it. The other 70% made no sense to him. If you can't understand the question, how can you solve it? You can't. So what was the real problem? Was it mathematics or was it language? When a child's language skills are weak, it's difficult for them to do well in any subject. That's when I realized the real problem wasn't math, it was language. So I asked my son, "Why didn't you ask your math teacher for help?" He said, "My math teacher told me this was a language problem, not a math problem." He asked me to see my language teacher. So he went to his language teacher, but the language teacher said, "These are math questions. You should ask your math teacher." Neither teacher was wrong. Each believed it belonged to the other. But who was left struggling? The child. So if your child faces the same situation one day, what will you do? Will you simply leave your child to struggle alone? If you don't find a way to help your child, eventually they may simply give up. Is that the future you want for your child? That's why every stage of a child's growth requires a different parenting focus. By the age of 3, help your child develop emotional stability. By the age of 6, establish clear rules and healthy boundaries so they grow up with confidence. By the age of 12, start giving them opportunities to make their own decisions. By the age of 18, your role is no longer to control them, but simply to guide them and keep an eye on their journey. We all know that raising children is not easy. Many parents try to avoid inconvenience or conflict. But don't be afraid of the hard work. Why? Because anything truly worthwhile always requires effort. The process is often difficult, it is often complicated, and parenting is no exception. We all know that most good things in life don't come easily. If you want a healthy body, you can't eat junk food every day and expect to stay fit. That's impossible. The same is true of relationships. Whether it's with your spouse, your friends, or your colleagues, good relationships don't happen by themselves. You have to invest in them. If you're always losing your temper and hurting others with your words, your relationships won't last. The same is true of your career. A successful career doesn't fall from the sky. It takes hard work, perseverance, and commitment. Yet many people think these things are troublesome. But the problem isn't the difficulty. The problem is that we're afraid of hardship, discomfort, and inconvenience. That's why we must teach our children from an early age not to fear hard work, not to fear challenges, and not to fear inconvenience. Because those who are willing to persevere are the ones who achieve great things. We often say we should support our children, but until what age? Many parents think things will be better once they go to university. But is that really true? University has its own pressures. Then we say everything will be fine after graduation. Is it? What if they can't find a job? That's another challenge. Then we say once they have a good job, everything will be fine. But is life really that simple? Sometimes people say everything will be fine once you get married. But is marriage really the end of life's challenges? Not necessarily. So how should we, as parents, help our children? My goal is to guide my child from birth all the way to the age of 50. Of course, my child isn't 50 yet, but I've already talked to him about the challenges he may face at that stage of life. I want to give him a better perspective for the future. Much of what I've shared today is included in this book. It is available in both English and Chinese. If you're interested, you're welcome to get a copy after today's session. We have a special promotion today. I hope you'll take one home. And if you'd like it signed, I'll be there after the talk. Thank you very much. This book is divided into 5 chapters. The first chapter focuses on children from birth to 6 years old. During these early years, we should help them develop good habits and a sense of rules. More importantly, parents must also learn how to become better parents. The next stage is primary school. This is when children learn about relationships, how to learn, and why learning is important. From the ages of 13 to 18, they need to learn independence, responsibility, and how to make good choices. At this stage, parents should teach them how to tell right from wrong. Unfortunately, many parents are too busy to guide their children through these important lessons. The fourth stage begins at around 19. As they begin dating and thinking about marriage, parents should continue to guide them. We need to teach them how to choose the right partner. What should they look for in a boyfriend or girlfriend? Who is the right person to spend a lifetime with? These are lessons that every parent should discuss with their children. One more thing, making the right choice is often more important than working hard. If you choose the wrong person, no matter how hard you try, you'll pay a very high price. For example, suppose you know someone has a gambling problem before you marry them. You may hope you can change them after marriage. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying it's very difficult, and the cost can be very high. So ask yourself, are you willing to pay that price? Or wouldn't it be wiser to choose someone with a healthier character from the beginning? The same is true if someone is addicted to drugs. If you already know that, would you still choose that person? That's why making the right choice is so important. When young people start dating, what should they talk about? Did your parents ever teach you how to date? Or what you should talk about before choosing a life partner? These are the conversations I share with my own children in this book. How should we approach dating? How do we choose the right life partner? How do we choose the right career? What kind of career will help you grow and make the best use of your strengths? I also explain why studying matters and why we should work hard. When you enter the workplace, how can you do your job well and become someone others can trust? By the time you reach your late 30s or 40s, you'll probably have a family and children. At that stage, you carry responsibilities both at work and at home. The challenge is learning how to balance your career with your family responsibilities. That balance comes through maturity, experience, and continuous growth. That's why I've included many thought-provoking topics in this book. For example, one simple question, why do we study? We often ask our children, why should you study? But if your child asks you the same question one day, how would you answer? Many parents simply say, study whatever you like. But is that really enough? As parents, we need to help our children make wise choices. We often teach our children to keep a low profile and not put themselves forward. But I tell my children something different. Sometimes you need the courage to step forward. You must be willing to ask. You must be willing to try. You must not be afraid of rejection. Because the people who succeed are usually the ones who dare to pursue opportunities. If you never ask, never try, and never step forward, opportunities rarely come to you. Don't expect success to simply fall from the sky. You have to go after it. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're working in a company. One day, your boss needs someone to represent the company in Japan. One employee thinks, I'm capable. My boss will notice me sooner or later. But will that really happen? Another employee steps forward and says, Boss, I'd like to go. I'm not afraid of the challenge. I'm willing to take the responsibility. I'll do my very best. Who do you think the boss will choose? Of course, the second one. The lesson is simple. When an opportunity comes, be willing to step forward. What's the worst that can happen? Your boss may simply say, Not this time. That's okay, try again next time. Or ask, What can I improve? Only those who ask will have opportunities. Don't expect opportunities to come looking for you. Life doesn't work that way. If you never step forward, your boss may never notice you. Instead of waiting, keep improving yourself. That's the best investment you can make. At the same time, build good relationships with people. Networking is important. Many people think, I'll just wait. My boss will notice me someday. But that's not always true. Why do people help you? Because you bring value. When you become valuable, people are willing to invest in you and give you opportunities. They don't help you out of pity. They help you because you have something valuable to offer. We often think we're smart, but the average IQ is only around 100. Most of us, including you and me, are about the same. Now imagine competing with someone whose IQ is 120 or even 140. Honestly, you won't beat them by intelligence alone. They're naturally gifted. Some of them don't even study as much, yet they still perform better. So how can you compete? Not with talent. You compete through effort. Be willing to do what others won't do. What does that mean? It means stepping forward when others step back. For example, if your company needs someone to work overtime and no one volunteers, you say, I'll do it. If the company needs someone to go to Japan, you say, I'll go. Why? Because every opportunity is a chance to learn. The more you're willing to sacrifice, the more you'll grow. That's something we should always remember. Today, I've also brought these 2 books with me. If you're interested, I'd love you to take a copy home. Let's continue learning and growing together. Thank you very much.